My daughter-in-law Jennifer looked me straight in the eye and said, "Diana, the best thing you could do for this family is leave us alone forever." So I did exactly what she asked. 3 weeks later, she called me sobbing, begging me to come back and save her marriage, her children, and her completely destroyed life. Let me tell you exactly what happened when I gave Jennifer everything she thought she wanted, and why she discovered too late that the interfering old woman she kicked out of the family was the only thing keeping her world from falling apart. 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect relationship with my son David's family. Every Sunday, they'd come to my house for dinner. David would help me with yard work while Jennifer and I cooked together, and my grandchildren Emma and Michael would play in my garden. I was 68, widowed for 3 years, and grateful that my son's family wanted me to be such a big part of their lives. Jennifer called me Mom, asked for my advice about the children's schools, even brought me flowers from her garden every week. Behind the scenes, I handled countless details that kept their lives running smoothly. I coordinated the children's medical appointments with their busy schedules, managed their school paperwork and permission slips, organized elaborate birthday parties that made Emma and Michael feel special. When work crises arose, I provided emergency childcare without question. I maintained their household calendar better than any assistant, reminded them of important deadlines they'd forgotten, and served as the family's institutional memory for everything from insurance policy numbers to appliance warranty information. Jennifer seemed grateful for my involvement. She'd call me when Emma was sick, and she couldn't leave an important meeting, knowing I'd pick up our granddaughter and handle the situation with the competence of someone who'd raised her own child. She'd text me photos of confusing permission slips, trusting me to decode the requirements and manage the details. When David traveled for business conferences, she'd bring both children to stay with me rather than juggle everything alone while maintaining her demanding marketing career. What I didn't realize was that Jennifer had been growing increasingly resentful of my role in their lives. Every solution I provided, every crisis I resolved, every organizational system I maintained had begun to feel like evidence of her own inadequacy rather than support for her success. My competence wasn't empowering her, it was making her feel incompetent by comparison. Looking back, I can see the warning signs I missed while being grateful for our close relationship. The way Jennifer's thank yous became more perfunctory over time, delivered with the mechanical politeness of someone fulfilling an obligation. How she'd bristle slightly when other parents commented on how organized and well-managed their family seemed. The increasing frequency with which she'd mention wanting more independence or needing to figure things out ourselves as a nuclear family. I thought these were natural growing pains as Jennifer gained confidence as a mother and wife. I didn't realize they were building toward an explosion that would destroy our relationship and teach us both lessons about appreciation, gratitude, and the devastating consequences of taking love for granted. That particular Sunday started like any other. David was fixing a squeaky gate in my backyard, armed with WD-40 and the patient determination he'd inherited from his father. I was in my kitchen making my famous chocolate chip cookies with Emma and Michael, a weekly tradition that had become one of our most treasured family rituals. The children loved helping me measure ingredients, their small hands carefully leveling cups of flour while they stole chocolate chips when they thought I wasn't looking. Emma, now 8, had appointed herself head quality control officer, insisting on testing every batch to make sure they're perfect for Daddy. Michael, 6 years old and perpetually covered in whatever he'd most recently touched, was my official taste tester and chocolate chip distribution specialist. Jennifer was setting the table in my dining room, arranging the good china we used for Sunday dinners, when she suddenly stopped and stared at me through the kitchen window. The expression on her face was one I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, like she'd been building up to this moment for months and had finally found the courage to act. She walked into the kitchen with the deliberate pace of someone who'd rehearsed what they were about to say. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, her entire demeanor suggesting this wasn't a spontaneous outburst, but a planned confrontation. "Diana," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, "we need to talk." I wiped cookie dough from my hands with a kitchen towel, immediately sensing the shift in atmosphere. The comfortable domesticity of my kitchen, warm cookies baking in the oven, children's laughter, the Sunday afternoon light streaming through windows, suddenly felt fragile, like something beautiful about to be shattered. Even Emma and Michael seemed to feel it, growing quiet at the kitchen table where they'd been chattering excitedly about their school week, upcoming soccer games, and plans for summer vacation. "Of course, honey," I said carefully, my judicial instincts warning me that whatever came next would be significant. "What's on your mind?" Jennifer glanced toward the backyard where David was still working, oblivious to the confrontation about to unfold in his mother's kitchen. Then she looked back at me with eyes that had turned completely flat and hostile, like someone who'd made a decision and was prepared to follow through regardless of casualties. "The best thing you could do for this family," she said slowly, as if she'd practiced the words in front of a mirror, "is leave us alone forever. Stop inserting yourself into every decision we make. Stop spoiling the children against our parenting rules. Stop acting like you're still the head of this family when David and I are the parents now." The words hit me like physical blows, each one precisely aimed to cause maximum damage. I gripped the kitchen counter to steady myself, feeling like the air had been sucked from my lungs. Around us, the comfortable symbols of our family life, the children's art projects covering my refrigerator, family photos spanning 3 generations, the cookie jar Emma had made me for Mother's Day, suddenly felt like evidence in a trial where I was being accused of crimes I didn't understand. "I don't understand," I whispered, genuinely confused by the venom in her voice. "What did I do wrong? How am I interfering?" Jennifer's smile was sharp as broken glass, filled with the satisfaction of someone finally delivering words they'd been holding back for far too long. "David agrees with me," she continued, the knife twisting deeper into my heart. "He's just too polite to hurt your feelings by saying it himself. But we've been talking about this for months, and we both think it's time for you to find your own life instead of trying to control every aspect of ours." Through the kitchen window, I could see David still working on the gate, whistling softly as he tested the hinges, completely unaware that his wife was systematically destroying his relationship with his mother. Emma and Michael sat frozen at the table, chocolate chip cookies forgotten as they watched their grandmother being attacked by their mother in language they didn't fully understand, but recognized as cruel. "What about Emma and Michael?" I asked, my voice barely audible as I looked at their confused, frightened faces. "What about my relationship with the grandchildren?" "What about them?" Jennifer shrugged with casual cruelty that took my breath away. "They have parents who love them and know what's best for them. They don't need a grandmother undermining our authority, spoiling them with sugar and outdated ideas, and teaching them that our rules don't matter because Grandma will always rescue them." The dismissive way she spoke about my relationship with Emma and Michael, as if 5 years of bedtime stories, scraped knee comfort, homework help, and unconditional love were somehow harmful to their development, triggered something deep in my memory. 35 years as a federal judge had taught me to recognize calculated manipulation when I heard it. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst born of temporary frustration or a bad day. This was planned, rehearsed, strategically delivered when David was out of earshot, and the children were present to witness my humiliation. She wanted to destroy not just my relationship with David, but my relationship with my grandchildren. She wanted them to see me rejected, diminished, cast aside like something that had outlived its usefulness. But what Jennifer didn't know was that she'd just made the most dangerous mistake of her life. She'd declared war on someone who'd spent decades protecting vulnerable people from predators exactly like her. David walked into the kitchen at that moment, wiping his hands on a towel and smiling with the satisfaction of a job well done. "Mom, the gate's all fixed. You shouldn't have any more problems with it squeaking when the wind picks up. I used that heavy-duty lubricant you suggested, and it's working perfectly now." He stopped mid-sentence, his smile fading as he sensed the tension crackling between Jennifer and me like electricity before a storm. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us with genuine confusion. "Everything okay in here?" Jennifer immediately transformed, her face melting from cold hostility into an expression of loving concern so seamless it would have fooled anyone who hadn't just witnessed her true nature. It was like watching a master actress slip into character, complete with softened voice and sympathetic body language. "I was just explaining to your mother that we think she might be happier focusing on activities with people her own age," she said in a voice dripping with false sympathy. "You know, book clubs, senior volunteer work, maybe some travel. Things that would give her a sense of purpose and fulfillment beyond managing our family's day-to-day schedule." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly, so convincingly, that even I might have believed it if I hadn't just experienced her actual words. She'd taken her vicious attack and repackaged it as thoughtful concern for my well-being, making herself look like a caring daughter-in-law worried about her mother-in-law's social isolation. David's face crumpled with what looked like genuine pain and confusion. "Mom, we're not trying to hurt you or push you away. We just think maybe some independence would be good for you. Jennifer's found some great programs for active seniors, and we thought you might enjoy meeting new people and trying new activities." "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady even as my heart shattered into pieces. I understand exactly what Jennifer is saying. But I didn't understand. Not yet. What I was about to discover was that Jennifer had underestimated exactly who she was attacking, and what she was about to lose when she got exactly what she'd asked for. As David hugged me goodbye that afternoon, whispering apologies that Jennifer couldn't hear, Emma clinging to my legs like she sensed something terrible had happened, and Michael pressing a handful of chocolate chips into my palm. For later when you're sad, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to give Jennifer exactly what she wanted: complete withdrawal from their lives, no more Sunday dinners, no more emergency babysitting when work crises arose, no more birthday party planning or holiday organizing, no more financial assistance when unexpected expenses strained their budget, no more of the 1,000 invisible ways I supported their family without them even realizing how much they depended on my help. Jennifer wanted me to leave them alone forever? Perfect. I was about to show her what alone really meant. And she was going to discover that the interfering old woman she'd just banished was the only thing standing between her family and complete chaos. Because while Jennifer had been planning this confrontation for months, I'd been quietly holding their world together in ways she'd never even noticed. Time to let her handle everything herself. The first thing I did after David and Jennifer left my house that Sunday afternoon was exactly what Jennifer had demanded. I left them completely alone. No phone calls to check on the children. No text messages asking about their week. No unexpected visits with groceries or small gifts. No offers to help with anything, no matter how desperate their situation might become. For 35 years as a federal judge, I'd learned that sometimes the best way to teach someone a lesson is to give them exactly what they think they want, and let them experience the full consequences of their choices. Jennifer was about to get a masterclass in unintended consequences. The first crack in her perfect plan appeared within 48 hours, and it was more serious than either of us expected. Tuesday morning, David called me 3 times in the span of 2 hours. I didn't answer any of the calls. Tuesday afternoon, he showed up at my house, looking confused and slightly panicked in a way I'd rarely seen since he was a child dealing with a crisis he couldn't solve. "Mom, why aren't you answering your phone? Is everything okay? Are you sick?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I said calmly, not inviting him inside despite the worry evident on his face. "I'm just doing exactly what Jennifer asked me to do, leaving you alone to live your own lives without my interference." But Emma's school called this morning about her permission slip for the field trip, and Jennifer couldn't find the paperwork anywhere. "We thought you might know where—" "I'm sure Jennifer can handle the school communication," I interrupted gently but firmly. She made it very clear that my involvement in managing your family's affairs was unwelcome and needed to stop immediately. David's face showed the first flicker of understanding that Jennifer's ultimatum was having consequences he hadn't anticipated. "Mom, she didn't mean you couldn't help with basic things like school forms. She meant exactly what she said, David. And I'm respecting her wishes completely. No more inserting myself into your decisions. No more managing details you should handle yourselves. No more spoiling the children or undermining your parenting authority." I watched my son struggle with the cognitive dissonance of getting exactly what his wife had demanded while simultaneously realizing he didn't actually want it. "I'll talk to her," he said weakly. "No need," I replied. Jennifer was very clear about what she wanted from me. I'm simply giving it to her. That same Tuesday evening, Emma's school called again. The permission slip situation had escalated. The field trip was Thursday, and without the proper paperwork, Emma couldn't attend. All of her friends were going, and she was devastated. Jennifer had spent her entire lunch break trying to navigate the school's bureaucracy, but couldn't figure out which forms were needed or where to submit them. For 3 years, I'd handled all school communication because I understood how the system worked and had built relationships with the administrative staff. Jennifer had never needed to learn these processes because I managed them invisibly. Wednesday morning brought a bigger crisis. Michael woke up with a high fever and couldn't go to school, but both David and Jennifer had important meetings they couldn't miss. In the past, one phone call to me would have solved the problem. I'd have been at their house within 30 minutes, armed with children's Tylenol and the patience to care for a sick 6-year-old. Instead, Jennifer had to choose between calling in sick to work, potentially damaging her standing on an important project, or leaving Michael with their teenage neighbor who had no experience with sick children and wasn't comfortable giving medication. She chose to stay home, which meant missing a client presentation she'd spent weeks preparing. Her boss was not pleased. Thursday evening, Jennifer called me for the first time since her kitchen ultimatum. "Diana, Emma's asking why you didn't come to comfort her about missing the field trip," she said, her voice tight with frustration and exhaustion. "David said you're upset about our conversation Sunday, but I think you misunderstood what I was trying to say." "I understood perfectly," I said calmly. "You asked me to leave you alone forever and stop inserting myself into your family's decisions, so I'm leaving you alone." "But that doesn't mean you can't help with basic things like school forms," Jennifer protested, her voice rising slightly. "That's not what I meant when I said—" "Actually, Jennifer, it means exactly that. You said I was interfering with your parenting and undermining your authority. School forms are parenting decisions. Emma's field trip permissions are your responsibility as her mother, not mine as her grandmother who's been asked to stop spoiling her." There was a long pause while Jennifer processed the logical trap she'd created for herself. "Look, maybe I was having a bad day," she said finally, her tone suggesting she thought this minor concession would solve everything. "Maybe I said things more harshly than I meant to." "You seemed very certain about your position," I replied evenly. "You specifically said the best thing I could do was leave you alone forever. You said I needed to stop acting like I was the head of your family. Those were very clear, very definitive statements." "But I didn't mean you couldn't help with emergencies," Jennifer said, desperation creeping into her voice. "How am I supposed to distinguish between helpful support and unwelcome interference?" I asked reasonably. "You've made it clear that my judgment about when help is appropriate cannot be trusted. The safest course is to provide no help at all. But David needs you to—" "Jennifer," I interrupted softly. "You can't have it both ways. Either you want me to leave you alone forever, or you don't. Which is it?" Another long pause. I could practically hear her realizing that she'd created a problem she couldn't solve without admitting she'd been completely wrong. "I'll talk to David," she said finally, and hung up. But the damage was accelerating faster than she'd anticipated, and the problems were becoming more serious than simple school permission slips. By the end of the second week, David was calling me daily, sounding increasingly desperate as their carefully balanced life began collapsing without the support systems I'd provided. The washing machine had broken down, flooding their laundry room. Jennifer spent hours on the phone trying to get a repair appointment, but didn't know which service company I'd always used or how to get priority scheduling for emergency repairs. They ended up paying triple rates for a weekend emergency call that could have been handled for a fraction of the cost if Jennifer had known the right numbers to call. Emma had gotten sick at school and needed to be picked up immediately, but neither parent could leave work. In the past, the school had my number as an emergency contact, and I'd have been there within 20 minutes. Instead, Emma spent 2 hours in the nurse's office, feeling miserable and abandoned, while Jennifer tried to rearrange her entire afternoon. Michael's soccer team needed parent volunteers for an upcoming tournament, and Jennifer had no idea how to navigate the school's volunteer coordination system. She accidentally signed up for 3 different positions on the same day, creating conflicts she couldn't resolve, and ended up having to pay fees for backing out of commitments she'd never understood in the first place. "Mom, we need your help," David said during his 5th call that week, his voice strained with exhaustion. "Jennifer's drowning trying to manage all the things you used to handle. She doesn't understand how you kept track of everything or made it look so easy." "I'm sure she'll figure it out," I said calmly. "She's a capable, intelligent woman. She told me herself that you didn't need my interference in your family's decision-making process." "But the children are asking for you constantly," David continued, his voice breaking slightly. "Emma cried herself to sleep last night because she didn't understand why Grandma Diana suddenly doesn't love her anymore. Michael keeps asking when you're coming back to make pancakes with him." That one hit me like a physical blow. But I'd learned long ago in my courtroom that sometimes you have to endure short-term pain to teach long-term lessons that prevent greater harm. "I love Emma and Michael more than anything in this world," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "Which is why I'm respecting their mother's clear instructions about my role in their lives. Jennifer wants them to understand that she and David are their parents, and that my involvement confuses their understanding of family authority. I'm helping her achieve that goal." "But that's not what she meant," David protested. "Then maybe Jennifer should have been more careful about her words when speaking to someone who spent 35 years listening to people's exact language in federal court," I replied. Week 3 was when Jennifer's carefully constructed world began collapsing in earnest, and the problems moved beyond inconvenience into actual crisis territory. The children's longtime babysitter quit without warning, leaving Jennifer scrambling to find last-minute childcare for a business trip David couldn't postpone. Emergency childcare services charged premium rates and required extensive background checks that took days to process. Jennifer ended up missing the trip entirely, potentially damaging David's professional reputation with his most important client. The dishwasher flooded their kitchen at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, and the emergency repair service charged triple rates for weekend calls. I'd maintained relationships with reliable contractors who would have handled the emergency for normal fees, but Jennifer didn't have those contacts and ended up paying more than $1,000 for repairs that should have cost $300. David's company demanded he travel for a crucial conference, but Jennifer couldn't handle the children's complex schedules alone. Soccer practice, piano lessons, school events, medical appointments, and playdate coordination that I'd managed like clockwork for years. She tried to cancel everything, disappointing Emma and Michael while creating conflicts with other parents who'd been counting on carpool arrangements. Every crisis that arose used to have the same simple solution: call Diana. She'll know what to do, she'll have the right contact information, she'll be able to handle it efficiently and cost-effectively. But Diana wasn't taking calls anymore. Friday of the 3rd week, Jennifer showed up at my house unannounced, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect makeup was smudged, her hair was disheveled, and her professional clothes were wrinkled like she'd been wearing them for too long. She looked like someone who'd been trying to hold together more than she could manage and was finally starting to crack under the pressure. "Diana, we need to talk," she said, her previous confidence replaced by barely contained desperation. "I'm listening," I said, remaining on my front porch and not inviting her in. I think maybe we both said things we didn't mean last Sunday, she began carefully, her voice suggesting she'd rehearsed this conversation but wasn't entirely confident in her approach. And maybe we should discuss how to move forward in a way that works for everyone involved. I'm confused, I said with genuine-sounding innocence. You were very clear that the best thing I could do was leave you alone forever. I've been doing exactly that for 3 weeks. What's the problem? Jennifer's composure cracked slightly, her professional mask slipping to reveal the exhaustion and panic underneath. The problem is that David and the children miss you, and there are certain situations where we used to rely on your knowledge and experience. But you said my involvement was interference, I reminded her gently. You said I was undermining your authority as parents and confusing the children about who makes the decisions in your family. Maybe I was being too harsh about some things, Jennifer admitted reluctantly, the words clearly difficult for her to say. Or maybe you were being completely honest about how you really felt about my role in your lives, I countered. In which case, I'm doing exactly what you wanted. The children have parents who love them and know what's best for them. You don't need a grandmother undermining your authority or spoiling them with outdated ideas. I could see the panic rising in Jennifer's eyes as she realized the trap she'd created for herself. She couldn't ask for my help without admitting she'd been wrong about everything. But she couldn't continue managing their lives without the support system she'd just destroyed through her own arrogance and ingratitude. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally, her voice breaking with desperation. "Nothing," I said honestly. "You asked me to leave you alone forever. I'm leaving you alone forever. Permanently." "But that's not what I meant," she protested, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Then maybe you should have been more careful about what you said to someone who'd spent 35 years holding people accountable for their exact words in federal court," I replied. For the first time, Jennifer seemed to register the reference to my professional background. The confusion on her face suggested she'd never bothered to learn much about her mother-in-law's career or understand what kind of person she'd been challenging. "What exactly did you do before retirement?" she asked weakly. "I was a federal judge for 35 years, I said calmly, "which means I understand the importance of precise language, careful consideration of consequences, and following through on clearly stated positions." The color drained from Jennifer's face as she realized she'd been playing word games and emotional manipulation tactics with someone who'd made a career of seeing through exactly those kinds of strategies. "Diana, please," she begged, her professional composure completely abandoned now. "I made a mistake. I was frustrated and overwhelmed and said things I didn't mean. Can't we just go back to the way things were before?" "No," I said simply. "Because the way things were before included you resenting my involvement and eventually exploding at me for helping your family. I'm not interested in waiting around for the next time you decide I'm interfering too much in your lives." Jennifer stared at me, finally understanding that she'd burned a bridge she couldn't rebuild through apologies or explanations. "What if I promise it won't happen again?" she tried desperately. "Promises don't change fundamental attitudes," I replied. "You showed me how you really feel about my role in your family. I'm respecting those feelings by removing myself permanently. But David and the children will adapt to the life you chose for them," I finished. "The life where grandmother isn't involved in their day-to-day activities or crisis management." Jennifer left my porch that afternoon, looking like someone who'd just realized she'd destroyed the most important relationship in her life through sheer arrogance and stupidity. But her real education was just beginning. Because while she'd been focused on winning an argument and asserting her independence, she'd lost something much more valuable than she'd ever imagined. And I was about to show her exactly what she'd thrown away. Week 4 was when Jennifer discovered the true scope of what she'd lost, and it was more devastating than either of us had anticipated. The call came at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning, Jennifer's voice shaking with barely controlled panic. "Diana, I know you said you didn't want to be involved anymore, But this is a real emergency. David's in the hospital. My stomach dropped despite my resolve to maintain boundaries, but I kept my voice steady. What happened? Heart attack. He collapsed at work yesterday afternoon. He's stable now, but he'll be in ICU for at least a week, maybe longer. The doctors say it was stress-related, brought on by overwork and pressure. Stress. From trying to manage everything I used to handle while maintaining his demanding career, no doubt. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. I hope he recovers quickly and completely. Diana, I can't handle this alone, Jennifer pleaded, her voice raw with exhaustion and fear. The children are terrified about their daddy being in the hospital. I don't understand the medical insurance procedures or who to call about what. David's boss is calling constantly about deadlines and projects that can't wait. I need help. Have you contacted David's office about family medical leave policies? I asked. They're required by federal law to provide support and accommodations during family medical emergencies. I don't know how any of that works, Jennifer admitted, her voice small. You always handled the complicated paperwork and insurance calls when anyone in the family had medical issues. Of course I did. For 5 years, I'd been quietly managing the bureaucratic complexities of their lives, while Jennifer focused on her marketing career and social activities, never bothering to learn the systems that kept their family protected and organized. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I said gently. You're a capable, intelligent woman. You'll learn these processes just like millions of other people manage their own family crises. But I don't know who David's doctors are beyond the emergency room staff, Jennifer continued desperately. I don't know what his insurance covers for extended hospital stays. I don't know how to get time off work to stay with him during the day. There are so many things I never learned because you always... She stopped, finally understanding the magnitude of what she'd rejected when she'd demanded her independence. Because I always interfered, I finished for her. That's not what I meant, Jennifer whispered. Yes, it is exactly what you meant. And you were right to want your independence. This is your chance to learn how to manage your own family's crises without relying on someone whose involvement you found unwelcome. The silence stretched between us before Jennifer spoke again, her voice barely audible. Emma asked me why Grandma Diana doesn't love Daddy enough to come help when he's really sick and might die. That one hit like a physical blow, exactly as Jennifer had intended it to, but I held firm. This lesson was too important to abandon now. Emma needs to understand that adults make choices about their relationships, and those choices have consequences that affect the whole family. She's 8 years old, Diana. She doesn't understand why you abandoned us when we need you most. I didn't abandon you, I corrected firmly. I gave you exactly what you explicitly asked for. Complete independence from my interference in your family's decisions and crisis management. Jennifer was crying now, but I couldn't let myself weaken. Some lessons can only be learned through experiencing their full consequences. What if David dies? She sobbed. What if something happens to him and the last conversation you had was me telling you to leave us alone forever? Then I'll live with that regret for the rest of my life, I said honestly. But I won't live with the knowledge that I forced my help on people who'd made it clear they didn't want it. I hung up and sat in my quiet house, feeling the weight of my decision settle around me like a heavy blanket. But sometimes love means teaching people lessons they don't want to learn, even when it breaks your own heart in the process. The next call came from Emma herself, using Jennifer's phone while her mother was at the hospital. Grandma Diana? Her small voice was thick with tears and confusion. Why won't you come help Daddy get better? Mommy said you don't want to help us anymore. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, but I kept my voice gentle and steady. Sweetie, your mommy asked me to let your family handle things by yourselves. She wants to take care of you and Daddy without my help, and I'm respecting her wishes. But I want you to help, Emma protested with the simple logic of childhood. Mommy cries all the time now, and she doesn't know how to make your special pancakes when I'm sad. And she gets angry when the insurance people call because she doesn't understand what they're saying. Your mommy is learning how to do those things, I explained. It's hard at first, but she'll get better at managing everything with practice. Can't you just come over until she learns how? Emma pleaded. I promise I won't tell her you're helping. No, sweetheart. Your mommy was very clear that she didn't want my help with your family's problems. But what if she was wrong? Emma asked with the devastating clarity that only children possess. Then she'll need to tell me that herself, I said softly. That same evening, Michael called. At 6 years old, his conversation was simpler but no less heartbreaking. Grandma Diana, Mommy said you're mad at us because we were bad. I'm not mad at anyone, honey. You and Emma are wonderful children, and I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Then why won't you come over and help? Daddy's sick, and Mommy burns everything she tries to cook, and Emma's crying because her soccer uniform isn't clean for the game tomorrow. Because sometimes grown-ups need to learn how to handle difficult things by themselves, I explained. But you know how to handle things really good, Michael said with 6-year-old logic. Why can't you just tell Mommy how to do stuff? I tried to help your mommy for a long time, I said, but she told me she didn't want my help anymore, and I have to respect her decision. That was a dumb decision, Michael declared with absolute certainty. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that seem dumb to other people, I agreed. Week 5 brought a cascade of crises that would have been manageable with my help, but became catastrophic without the support systems I'd maintained for years. The insurance company denied coverage for David's extended hospital stay because Jennifer missed a crucial filing deadline. She'd never learned that certain forms had to be submitted within 48 hours of admission, or that pre-authorization was required for specialized cardiac care. The financial implications were staggering, potentially tens of thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket expenses they couldn't afford. Emma's school called repeatedly about missing permission slips, overdue fees, and incomplete emergency contact information. Michael got sick with a stomach virus and had to stay home from school, but Jennifer couldn't take time off work without risking her job on the important project she'd already compromised by missing the client presentation. David's boss, frustrated by missed deadlines and poor communication about project status, began discussing whether David's position would still be available when he recovered. Jennifer tried to manage his responsibilities from the hospital, but she didn't understand his work or have access to the professional relationships he'd built over years. Meanwhile, I was learning about their escalating crises through the neighborhood gossip network and the occasional desperate phone call from one of the children. Mrs. Peterson, who lived next door to David and Jennifer, filled me in during our chance encounter at the grocery store. That poor woman looks absolutely exhausted, she told me. Dark circles under her eyes, always rushing around looking frazzled. I offered to help with the children, but she said she had everything under control, though from what I can see through my kitchen window, she definitely doesn't. I'm sure she's doing her best under difficult circumstances, I said diplomatically. Weren't you always over there helping out with those kids? Mrs. Peterson asked. I haven't seen your car in their driveway for weeks. Usually you were there at least 3 times a week. Jennifer felt they needed more independence as a family, I explained. Mrs. Peterson raised an eyebrow. Well, they certainly got what they asked for. The breaking point came during week 6, and it was more serious than anyone had anticipated. David had been released from the hospital, but was on strict bed rest for another month. His recovery was complicated by the stress of worrying about his job, the insurance problems, and watching his family fall apart while he was physically unable to help. Jennifer was juggling his medical care, 2 confused and frightened children, a demanding career she couldn't afford to lose, and a household that was literally falling apart without the organizational systems I'd helped create and maintain for 5 years. The call came at 11:30 on a Friday night, 6 weeks after Jennifer had told me to leave them alone forever. Diana, Jennifer's voice was hollow, defeated, stripped of all the confidence and hostility she'd shown in my kitchen that Sunday afternoon. I need to tell you something. I'm listening. I was wrong. Completely. utterly, catastrophically wrong about everything. I waited for her to continue, giving her the space to say what she needed to say. I had no idea how much you did for us. None whatsoever. I thought you were just visiting and spending time with the children on Sundays. I didn't realize you were holding our entire life together behind the scenes. Jennifer, no, please let me finish. I've spent 6 weeks discovering everything you used to handle that I never even noticed. The insurance coordination, the school paperwork and communication, the household maintenance schedules, the children's activity management, the family emergency planning, the contractor relationships, the medical appointment coordination. You weren't interfering with our lives. You were preventing disasters and making everything work smoothly. I still didn't speak, letting her work through the full realization of what she'd destroyed. David almost lost his job because I couldn't manage his project responsibilities while he was in the hospital. Emma missed her field trip because I forgot to turn in the permission slip. Michael's been eating cereal for dinner half the week because I don't know how to cook anything the children actually like and will eat. We're drowning in medical bills because I missed insurance deadlines I didn't even know existed. Her voice broke completely as the magnitude of her mistake overwhelmed her. I destroyed the most important relationship our family had because I was too stupid and prideful to appreciate what you were giving us freely, without expecting anything in return, except to be treated with basic respect and gratitude. What are you asking for, Jennifer? I said quietly. I'm asking if there's any possible way you could forgive me and consider helping us again. Not because I'm demanding it this time, but because I'm begging for it. Because I understand now that what I thought was interference was actually love in action. The line was quiet for a long moment while I considered my response. Diana, I know I have no right to ask for anything after what I said to you and how I treated you. But David and the children need you desperately. And I need you too. I need to learn how to be the kind of family member who deserves your help instead of the kind who takes it for granted and then attacks you for providing it. What's changed, Jennifer? I asked. Everything, she said immediately. I understand now that what I thought was interference was actually love expressed through action. I understand that you weren't trying to control us or undermine our authority as parents. You were trying to support us and make our lives easier. And I understand that rejecting your help wasn't independence, it was stupidity. And if I help you again, and 6 months from now you decide I'm interfering too much in your family's decisions, then I'll remember these 6 weeks for the rest of my life, Jennifer said with absolute conviction. I'll remember what our life looks like without you in it. I'll remember Emma crying herself to sleep because she doesn't understand why Grandma Diana abandoned her. I'll remember Michael asking why you don't love us anymore. I'll remember David's health crisis getting worse because I couldn't handle the stress of managing everything alone. And I'll never be stupid enough to throw away your love and support again. I sat in my quiet house, weighing my options carefully. Jennifer had certainly learned her lesson about taking help for granted. The question was whether she'd learned it permanently, or whether this was temporary desperation that would fade once the immediate crisis passed. Jennifer, if I consider helping again, things will be different this time. How different? You'll acknowledge my contributions instead of taking them for granted. You'll treat me as a valued family member instead of an unwelcome burden. You'll never again suggest that my love and support are interference or control. And you'll teach Emma and Michael to appreciate help when it's offered, instead of treating it as something they're entitled to receive. Yes, Jennifer said immediately. All of that. Whatever boundaries and expectations you want to set, I'll respect them completely. What I want, I said slowly, is to be part of a family that appreciates what I bring to it instead of a family that resents my involvement until they need me to solve their problems. You have that, Jennifer promised. You've always had that from David and the children. Now you have it from me too, and I'll make sure you never have to doubt it again. I made my decision, guided by my love for my son and grandchildren, but also by the knowledge that Jennifer had learned an important lesson about gratitude and respect. I'll be over tomorrow morning to help David get settled properly and to figure out how to fix the problems that have accumulated over the past 6 weeks. Thank you, Jennifer whispered. Thank you so much. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I've learned from this mistake. But Jennifer? Yes? If you ever speak to me the way you did 6 weeks ago, if you ever again tell me to leave your family alone, I'll leave permanently. No second chances, no reconciliation attempts, no emergency exceptions. 1 strike, and I'm done forever. I understand, she said. And Diana? I'm so sorry, for all of it. For every cruel word, for every moment of ingratitude, for putting you through 6 weeks of heartbreak because I was too proud and stupid to appreciate what I had. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about the past 6 weeks and the lesson both Jennifer and I had learned about the difference between interference and support, between control and love, between taking help for granted and appreciating it properly. Jennifer had gotten exactly what she'd asked for, complete independence from my so-called interference. And she'd discovered that what she'd called interference was actually the foundation that kept her family functioning smoothly and successfully. Sometimes the most powerful way to show someone your value is to withdraw it completely and let them experience life without the support they've been taking for granted. Jennifer would never again underestimate the difference between interference and support. And I would never again help people who didn't value what I was giving them. The next morning, I drove to David and Jennifer's house for the first time in 6 weeks. Emma and Michael must have been watching for my car, because they came running out before I'd even turned off the engine, launching themselves into my arms like I'd returned from a war zone. "Grandma Diana," Emma sobbed, clinging to me with desperate relief. "I missed you so much it hurt my heart every day." "I missed you too, sweetheart," I said, holding them both tight and feeling my own heart begin to heal. Michael buried his face against my shoulder. "Mommy said you were mad at us and didn't want to see us anymore." "I was never mad at you," I assured him. "Sometimes grown-ups have to work out their problems before they can be together again." Jennifer appeared in the doorway, and the woman I saw was completely different from the confident, hostile person who'd told me to leave them alone forever. She looked older, humbler, exhausted by 6 weeks of discovering how much she'd depended on help she'd never bothered to acknowledge or appreciate. "Thank you for coming back," she said quietly, her voice carrying genuine gratitude instead of the entitled expectation I'd grown accustomed to. "Thank you for learning why you needed me to," I replied. For the first time in our 5-year relationship, I saw real respect and appreciation in my daughter-in-law's eyes, instead of resentment and competition. Over the following months, I watched Jennifer transform from someone who took my help for granted into someone who actively appreciated and acknowledged my contributions to their family's success and happiness. She started thanking me for things she'd previously ignored completely. She began asking questions about how I managed various situations instead of assuming I'd just handle them invisibly. Most importantly, she started teaching Emma and Michael to value their grandmother's involvement instead of treating it as an automatic given. "Grandma Diana helps us stay organized and prepared," she'd tell them. "Without her systems and knowledge, our life would be much harder and more stressful." David recovered fully from his heart attack, and his boss, impressed by how well Jennifer had eventually learned to manage his responsibilities and communicate with clients, offered him a promotion with more flexibility for family time and better health benefits. "That promotion wouldn't have happened if you hadn't come back to help us," David told me. "Jennifer was drowning, and it was affecting my recovery and my professional reputation." "The promotion happened because Jennifer learned to accept and appreciate help instead of rejecting it out of pride," I corrected. "That's a skill that will serve your family well for the rest of your lives." 6 months after Jennifer's ultimatum, we celebrated Emma's 9th birthday with a party that perfectly illustrated how our family dynamics had changed. Jennifer planned the event with the organizational skills I'd taught her, but she consulted with me about details and acknowledged my contributions openly in front of the other parents. Grandma Diana taught me how to coordinate with all the other families, she told one mother, and she showed me the system for organizing activities so no one gets overwhelmed and everyone has fun. You're lucky to have such an involved and helpful mother-in-law, the woman replied. I am incredibly lucky, Jennifer agreed. It just took me a while to realize how lucky, and I almost lost that blessing through my own stupidity. That evening, after the guests had left and the children were in bed, Jennifer and I sat in the same kitchen where she'd delivered her ultimatum 6 months earlier. I've been thinking about something, she said. About why I reacted so badly to your help and said those terrible things to you. What conclusion did you reach? I think I was jealous and insecure, she admitted. The children adored you. David turned to you for advice about everything, and you seemed to handle every situation effortlessly while I struggled with basic household management and parenting challenges. Instead of learning from you and being grateful for your support, I resented you for making me feel incompetent. And what's different now? Now I realize that having someone with your experience and skills in our family isn't a threat to my role as wife and mother. It's the greatest gift we could possibly have, and I was an ungrateful fool to see it any other way. What changed your perspective? I asked. Living without you, Jennifer said immediately. Realizing that your involvement wasn't taking anything away from me, it was giving me the support and knowledge I needed to be successful in my own roles as a mother and wife. A year later, Jennifer nominated me for the local Family Hero Award, writing an essay about how my support had enabled her family to thrive despite serious challenges. She described the 6 weeks when I'd withdrawn my help as the most educational disaster of my life. My mother-in-law doesn't interfere with our family, she wrote. She is the foundation that makes our family's success possible. Learning to appreciate her wisdom and support took losing her temporarily, but I'll never make that mistake again. The hardest lesson Jennifer learned about people was that love in action can look like interference when you don't understand its value or appreciate its source. The most generous, helpful people in your life are often the ones whose contributions you notice least, because they work hard to make your life easier without needing credit or recognition for their efforts. But here's what I learned about my own inner wisdom during those 6 difficult weeks. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people is to withdraw your help temporarily and let them experience the full consequences of not valuing what you give them. Your inner wisdom will tell you when people are taking you for granted, treating your contributions as obligations rather than gifts, or resenting your help while simultaneously depending on it. Trust that instinct. And don't be afraid to show people your value by temporarily removing it from their lives. Sometimes the people who claim they don't need your help are the ones who need it most, but they'll never appreciate what you do for them until they try to live without it and discover how much harder their lives become. My inner wisdom told me that Jennifer needed to learn this lesson the hard way, through experience rather than explanation. And it was absolutely right. Jennifer never again told me to leave them alone, because she learned what being truly alone actually meant for her family. And now she makes sure Emma and Michael understand that the people who help you deserve gratitude and respect, not resentment and demands for independence. Your inner wisdom matters more than other people's opinions about your contributions to their lives. When someone dismisses your help as interference or tells you to stop being involved in their lives, show them what their life looks like without your support. They'll either learn to appreciate what you give them, or they'll learn to live without it. Either way, you'll discover who truly values your presence and contributions in their life. Jennifer learned to value me through loss. Don't let the people in your life make the same mistake she made. Your inner wisdom about your own worth is more accurate than their judgment of your contributions. Trust it. Honor it. And never let anyone convince you that love expressed through action is the same as unwelcome interference. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can say to someone who loves you is leave us alone forever. because they might do exactly what you ask. And you might discover that their interference was actually what kept your life working.